Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Thanks for watching. Much appreciated. Today, what we're going to do is I'm just going to spend a little bit of time and talk about the differences between React functional components and React class-based components, just to hopefully make things a little clearer for you. I know other content creators have made videos like this, but a different perspective always helps. And I just wanted to give you a basic breakdown of the differences and features of each one of them. Okay, so let's dive into it. First off, I'm going to show you, this is the React documentation for components and props. Again, components refers to both function and class components, as you see right here. A functional component, and I'm going to show you a real life example of that in just a second with VS Code. But this is the documentation. It's good and clean, but I wouldn't say it's, if this was your first day learning React, that you could just go to this site and automatically just pick it up. So I'm going to go over to VS Code, and I got side-by-side comparison here. Let me scroll up. So let me just go over what I did real quick. So I created a folder called class func, and I did npx create React app, created a React application boilerplate, and then I just went through and deleted extra files that I did not need. And if you need a how-to on that, I will leave that linked in the description on how to get started with Create React App, because it is very helpful, especially when you're learning in the beginning. So then what I did was I have my app.js over here, and then I imported a component called func-based component and class-based component, and put them into my main app so that we could see them printed out. And I'll show you what that looks like right now. It's over here. So this is basically all we have. Here's the func-based component section, and here's the class-based component section. I'm going to go through exactly what's going on here. So let's go back to our code, close app.js. Then in my comps folder or components folder, I have that func-based component and class-based component, which are displayed here. Now, I'll tell you, I'll be honest, one thing I like to do, guys, is sometimes I feel like it helps me learn is if I can have a video that is very explanatory, meaning the person is citing out certain information, and I can sort of listen to it as I'm drifting off to sleep, and I feel like I retain it better. So that's kind of along the lines of what this video is going to be. I'm not going to be doing much typing per se, a little bit maybe, but for the most part I'm just going to be going over the differences just so you can pick it up. And maybe you could put this video on while you're in the car, not watching it of course, because that would be dangerous and stupid, but maybe just put it on while you're in the car, and then you can hear me talk about the differences. Okay, so all right, let's whoops, sorry about that. Let's get started. So two kinds. Our functional based component is over here. Our class based component is over here. And at the bottom of each component, I just added some styling so that we could differentiate when we look at the web page. The purple color, everything pushed to the middle, etc. So no need to worry about that. That's totally irrelevant. I just added it so it's a little cleaner. Excuse me. So basically, a functional component is just a plain JavaScript pure function that accepts props as an argument and returns a React element, which is JSX, which is this, H4 divs, etc. A class-based component requires you to extend from React component and create a render function which returns a React element, and that's what we'll talk about first. So basically, let me just move this over. So this is our class-based component. It extends component from React because we're creating a component, and every class-based component must have a render method. Okay, so it just has to have that. Watch, if I comment this out and then save, it's going to be no bueno. See, instance.render is not a function, right? Basically, where is it? Yeah, class-based comp, no render method found on the return component instance. You may have forgotten to define render. Okay, so must have a render. Okay, now functional components, on the other hand, do not need a render. In fact, I don't even think you could put that in there. All they need is a return statement, and even then, you don't even need that. You could just clear that and do console.log. Just do that. So basically, functional components are just that. Let me refresh. Yeah, func component. You don't even need a return statement. So the same rules apply to functional based components as any other regular function in JavaScript. But of course, for right now, if you want to see anything on the screen, we're going to return this. We're going to return this div. So, like I said, there's no render function for functional-based components, but it is required for class-based components. Next, I have functional components run from top to bottom, and once excuse me, once the function is returned, it can't be kept alive. Okay, so it may not be obvious, but it may make more sense when I go over the class-based component to this. Class component is instantiated, excuse me, and different lifecycle method is kept alive and being run and invoked depending on phase of class components. So what does that mean? So if you've worked with React before, I'm sure you've heard of lifecycle methods. Now, lifecycle methods are by default included in class-based components as component did mount, component will unmount, I think, which is deprecated, I forget. But they have all these lifecycle methods that come automatically with it. We do not have that in functional-based components. Now, of course, I'm sure you're thinking, well, what about hooks? Yes, correct. That does play a factor. And I will get into that a little bit later. But technically, before hooks was introduced, functional-based components basically just did very basic things. And they really couldn't control much. And we'll get into some other reasons why. So as you can see, even though it's less code, technically, it does way less, and it has way less control. Whereas class-based components have much more code, but they're obviously more powerful. And until React hooks came around, it's what you had to use. Okay, so functional-based components do not have access to lifecycle methods. Class-based components do. Right? So I'll show you real quick. So I have this component did mount. So once this component mounts, it'll just console.log component mounted. If I refresh, and there you go, component mounted. Real quick, I just want to show you the documentation here. Where is it? So the component lifecycle, each component has several lifecycle methods. The mounting, which means the order, basically the stack order of when these things are executed. So for a class component, these methods are called in the following order when an instance of a component is being created and inserted into the DOM. First, the constructor, which we'll go over in a little bit. Basically, that's the state. This, I don't know what that is. No, I'm just kidding. It's the static version of get derived state from props. But basically constructor, then the render method, which is whatever you're displaying, whatever you're rendering to the DOM or to the web page. And then finally is component did mount, your lifecycle method. So whatever you want to happen after the component is rendered, that's what you put in there. So lifecycle methods, obviously very vital, probably why they call it lifecycle method. Okay, so let's move on. Functional components, also known as stateless components. Now, this is what I wanted to get into because this is a very important distinction that beginners need to realize. Functional-based components on their own cannot carry or hold state. They can't. They can have variables, but they can't have state that can change based on user interactions or whatever. So also known as stateless components, as they simply accept data and display them in some form, that they are mainly responsible for rendering a UI. Okay, so that kind of sums it up. So basically, they could functional-based components on their own, and I'm saying that on purpose, can only accept props. Okay, so I pass them in here, and it's props.name. Hang on a sec. Let me open the app.js. So I pass the props into here, func test, as the prop is name. I pass it into, I take it out of here, and then I display it here, and that's where we get this. Okay, but I can't. I can't create state up here on its own. Like I said, hooks. We're gonna go over that quickly at the end. Or towards the end. Okay, as opposed to class components, also known as stateful components, because they implement logic and state. Now, class-based components hold state, which is right here in the constructor. Okay, we pass in super so that we have access to this, which is this keyword, which is this down here, so we can reference. So the render method can reference things back up in the component itself, and this is it. This dot state equals, and then we lay out our state, and then when we access it down here, this dot state dot name. Okay. So class-based components can have state by default. Functional components need to have hooks, but if hooks were never introduced, then no state for functional-based components, just props. Okay. Let's see. React lifecycle methods, for example, component did mount cannot be used in functional components. Yes. React lifecycle methods can be used inside class-based components. For example, component did mount. Right. We talked about that. Lastly here, let's see. Correct, and I have this function in here that just adds a 1 to the age. That's the other thing is you have the state, which is immutable, means it can't be changed, or it shouldn't be changed. It won't allow you. But we can render a new state, which with this dot set state. And again, this keyword references the class itself. This references this. You have to have this in the class-based component, and super is what allows you to do that. And by the way, if we wanted to pass props, now we're not going to, but if we wanted to pass props to this class-based component, this is where you would do it, and also pass it to props. To super, excuse me, because in order to get access to these props, pass down through, say, app.js, like if I were to go name equals class test, in order to, I'm not going to do this, but in order to access that, you would have to pass props into super, because then wherever you were accessing it, you would have to say, excuse me, this dot props dot whatever name, right? So super gives you access to props through this, okay? So slight difference, but over here it's a little more simple, but regardless. So I just wanted to show you this function here. because everything is almost everything is controlled by this. The this keyword refers, and that's kind of one of the reasons why they started using functional based components, because the this keyword can sometimes be confusing, especially when you're first starting out. So it just allows us to bind methods to the constructor. Okay, meaning we can use methods, around the thing, or around the component. Sorry. And that add age thing that I was showing you here, on click this dot add age for the button. It's not a big deal. It just increases the number there. But but the reason I'm able to access this function here is because I'm using this keyword here, which is passed to me through super in the constructor. Okay, as you can see here, props is a lot easier to pass. I'm sorry, not props. If you wanted a function, you would say just const my func equals. So I'm trying not to do too much coding, so that if you're listening to this by yourself, here console.log button push. So this my func here, let's do a button push me, and we'll say on click. Oops. I get confused with React and React Native. In React Native it's on press, but on React on just React it's on click, because obviously you're on a desktop. I'm gonna instantiate it. Whoops, sorry. Here, and then do my func, and then I'll save that. I guess that'll work. I don't know. Yeah, so push me, button push, right? Okay, so we know it works. That's not the point of it. Point is that you don't need the this keyword. That's very important, and that's a big reason why functional components are tending to be more popular than class-based components. Class-based components are the old school, rock solid. You know they're going to work. However, you need to know how to use them. Functional-based components are the new kid in town that sort of work, but are not as strong and sturdy as the old guys, which is true in life, I guess. Anyway, so here we didn't have to specify this. We just create a constant and assign it to a function. Okay. Is there anything else I wanted to talk about? I think that's it. Again, this is just a very basic breakdown. Now, like I said, functional-based components, I'll just go over real quick because I know obviously hooks is a big thing, so we got to import, React, and here's the hooks. So we do use state and use effect from React. Okay, actually let me expand this just a little bit. So excuse me, use state is the same as a construct. Well, it's not the same, but it's the replacement of constructor. So we can say here const should be a space there, name equals use state. And this is where we set our initial state. Could be empty, but we'll just say test. I'm going to come down here, and all we need to do, this is the beauty of functional components, great as class-based components are, all we need to do is pass in name in our JSS expression. And as you can see, it still says test. And we still have our little button. So listen, when and where should you use them? I would use, now that we have hooks, like use state, use effect, use ref, use memo. There's a ton of them. Uh, it used to be you only use functional based components when needed. Like if it didn't have to control state because it didn't have access to state, you couldn't store state in it. Class based components were the only ones that could do it, but obviously now that's changed. So, you know, uh, I would still definitely recommend learning class based components. And I definitely am going to have some more videos. I have a few videos talking about it in my channel currently, but I definitely want to update them a little bit. So if that sounds good to you, doing some more of these function-based component tutorials where I focus specifically on either class-based components and all their individual quirks, should I say. Same with functional-based components, separate videos. Please let me know in the comments below. And also, if you found this video at all helpful, despite my rambling, please leave a like and please consider subscribing because I would appreciate it. And that is it. I hope everybody has a great weekend. Thank you and take care.